Good afternoon, everybody. Today's battle rhythm, PTS or PTSD, Trends and Treatments, will be hosted by Joshua Wilson. Joshua is the CVI manager for our program, Corporate Veteran Initiative, which looks at helping corporations serve their veterans better. I'm going to go ahead and pass over my presentation to Josh, and he is going to start today's session. Josh, thank you.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today for the Battle Rhythm. I am Joshua Wilson with the Corporate Veteran Initiative, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to our guests today for joining us, Bart Sherwood and Ken Falk. Thank you to all the community affiliates, 4-Star Alliance members, veteran service organizations, and additional guests for joining us today as we discuss the issue of post-traumatic stress. To explore this issue thoroughly, we have invited Ken Falk, the chairman of the Boulder Crest Foundation, and Bart Sherwood, the program director of TADSAW. Please feel free to add questions and thoughts in the chat box as we go along. We will have time at the end of today's presentation specifically for question and answers. After our question and answer, we'll go into breakout rooms to collaborate around the issues aligned to post-traumatic stress. Today's session will conclude at 3:15. So for our first presenter, it's going to be Ken Falk. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we will now pass it over to you.
Thank you, Joshua. Well, thank you all for being here. I just want to go over. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat room, and I'll do my best in the breakouts or later to answer them. As Joshua said, my name is Ken Falk. I'm a retired Navy EOD guy. I spent 21 years in the Navy, about 10 of those doing traditional Navy EOD work, in the last 11 years or 12 years or so of my career doing Special Forces support roles. I retired as a Master Chief Petty Officer, which is a senior enlisted rank in the Navy, and I went on to run a couple of small companies that I was able to grow and sell, and spend most of my time today doing the fundraising activity around Boulder Crest Foundation. So early in the war, my wife and I started something that today is known as the EOD Warrior Foundation. Our primary mission in that work was really focused on taking care of severely injured, physically injured EOD guys and gals that were at the hospitals, primarily here in DC, where I live about an hour west, and primarily raising money to have their families be able to spend long periods of time here at the hospitals at Bethesda and Walter Reed. From about 2010 to 13, we had the worst years in Afghanistan for amputees. And we started bringing, my wife and I started bringing the families of most of these wounded troops out to our home in Bluemont, Virginia. Inspired us to donate 37 acres of our farm. And we built the nation's first privately funded retreat center for combat veterans and their family members. And that's Boulder Crest, Virginia, which you can see here in these pictures. The initial mission of Boulder Crest, Virginia was really family respite, getting these families who were here in the DC hospitals for long time stays to be able to come out and enjoy and get away from the hospital settings. We knew that the war would end eventually, and weren't sure when. Didn't think it would go on for 20 years, but we knew it would end eventually, and we knew that our mission would transform a little bit. In the first couple of years that we had Boulder Crest, Virginia open, we really did two things. One was this family respite. Families could come out and stay free of charge for 2 to 7 nights. And the second mission was allowing small nonprofits, which we quantified as small nonprofits were groups that were $1 million or less in annual revenue, who my wife and I have been asked to donate money to many, many times. But we said, rather than donating money, we would donate this facility, and folks that were doing, quote unquote, innovative things could come out and use the facility, and we would pay for all the food and cleaning and everything free of charge. Well, in that first year, we met some really good people, and we met some really crazy ones. And that set me out on a journey to really try to find where good PTSD care was going, because that's what we were really kind of getting into at that point in time. We were seeing that it wasn't as much as the visible injuries that were really setting people back as much as the invisible injuries of war. About 3 years into our existence, one of our donors, our biggest donor, died and left us $10 million. And we opened up a second facility, which was our dream, west of the Mississippi in southern Arizona, and bought a beautiful ranch out there that does the exact same programs as Virginia, but it looks a little bit different. Our belief, and for those of you that don't know me, my belief is simply that combat forges warriors. It doesn't break them. And that normally, I think Sebastian Junger said it best in his book Tribe, was that warriors aren't broken by what they're coming home from, it's what they're coming home to. And I think society and the military still doesn't have a great way of transitioning warriors back into civil society. And for that reason, we see things like PTSD and depression and anxiety and other related struggles of stress really basically take a toll on this generation and previous generations as well. I grew up in a household with a grandfather who was a World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War vet. And the guy was as hard as a man could be, but he definitely suffered, from the effects of his military service, and started drinking heavily, and really just kind of ruined our family, part of our family anyway. And I've seen this up close, as most of you probably have as well. So I want this belief to really be understood, is that in our gardens at both of our locations is this quote by Thucydides. And what Thucydides is saying here is that all men are created equal, but the best have been trained in the severest of school, that school being combat specifically. And that's where we take our starting point from. On my journeys around the United States, talking to some of the top doctors in the country who treat PTSD, places like Harvard, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, I met over and over again with people who said what we were doing didn't work. And I asked somebody one time, I said, if it doesn't work, then why are we doing these treatments? And somebody said to me, well, that's the only thing the insurance companies reimburse us for. Along this journey that I had taken around the US, I met a doctor who had coined this term PTSD back in 1995, a guy named Rich Tedeschi out of the University of North Carolina. At the highest level, what it means is that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. This whole concept of Thucydides, that we are forged on the battlefield. But I think the story, the military story that is most, I think, appropriate to me is this one here, of these 591 men who came home from Vietnam, who had been imprisoned in camps for anywhere from 4 months to 8 years. The psychiatric community had told the families of these men to be prepared to institutionalize them, and the complete opposite occurred. In comparison to the Vietnam generation of soldiers who came back from war, about 30% of them suffered with PTSD, which arguably is true for our modern day generation. The VA says between 11 and 20%. I think it's probably closer to 30% based on our research. But at the end of the day, what Tedeschi told me was that the men who came home from prison camps, Vietnam prison camps, only about 4% of them really suffered. And interestingly enough, the ones that really suffered out of these prison camps were the ones that were in captivity for the least amount of time. And let that sink in for a minute, because it always, every time I say it, it shocks me a little bit. I've met many of these men. Most of these men went on to do some amazing things in the aftermath of their trauma. And that's really what inspired us to go down the road of post-traumatic growth. We created a program with the help of Dr. Rich Tedeschi himself and others to try to cultivate post-traumatic growth and facilitate the concepts of it. Because really what Tedeschi had studied was the outcomes. Sometimes the studies lasted 10, 12 years, and they were the outcomes of people who have gone through stressful situations and grieving processes. And I asked Tedeschi, as I got to know him a little better, I said, do you think we could teach people how to achieve that post-traumatic growth in their lives sooner than waiting just for the outcomes? And he said nobody had ever asked him that before, and was very interested in that, and said he would be willing to help. So that's what we did. We created this program. It's called Warrior Path. The concept of the program is that it's very similar to a military training school. Very, very regimented, very, very intense. It starts very early in the morning, it ends very late at night. The program starts with a 7-day, we call it an initiation, at one of our facilities. And then we have a 90-day follow-up that's done across an app called MyPath. In addition to allowing combat veterans to come through the program, we also allow first responders, a small minority that are privately funded separately from our combat veterans programs. But we have a cohort-based model, about 6 to 8 guys or gals. We do male and female programs separately who go through this initiation and then go through it as a cohort on the app with their instructors over the next 90 days. This is the terminal learning objective, as any training program would have, but this is really our concept, is that individuals, will be trained in how to live a better life than they're living with the elements of war, and how to come back to themselves and their family and their team and their country. Our mantra at Boulder Crest is come home from war and be the productive member of society here that you were on the battlefield. This is the 5 elements of post-traumatic growth when you train it. Think of this as a lifelong learning process. It's not necessarily mechanistic, meaning that you do one phase and then another. But at the end of the day, what happens here is that that we go through all of these kind of phases in a very trusted environment. And that's really what has to happen for these things to work, is that you have to get trust and connection right first. As most of you know, who deal with traditional mental health care, whether it's at the VA or anywhere else, quite frankly, is trust and connection aren't met, the majority of people will drop out. About 50% of people who start PTSD care will drop out after the first appointment because of the lack of trust and connection in the relationship with the providers or the facility. So these are the phases. Education at the end of the day is really about educating yourself on what's going on in your body, how to gain wisdom throughout life by doing things like reading and meditating and all those types of things, eating properly, exercise. Regulation is about having our bodies have the ability to self-regulate. Our bodies have that ability, but when you put bad things into them, drugs and alcohol, lots of energy drinks, tobacco, those types of things, our bodies' natural chemical abilities tend to get screwed up, and we don't self-regulate well. And PTSD especially will set you back. And if you can't self-regulate, we always tell people, if you can't self-regulate, you'll probably self-medicate. And once you go down that road, it's very difficult to come back. Disclosure, Brene Brown's a famous psychologist out in Stanford. I think she said it best in one of her TED Talks, is that shame and guilt can't withstand the spoken word. So during our 7-day initiation, we go into childhood trauma and previous traumas, and that disclosure allows people to get things off their back, off their chest that they maybe have never told anybody else in the world. The story portion of post-traumatic growth is about creating the new story in our life, where we want to be and how we're going to get there. If you believe that today is the first day of the rest of your life, then we just need to learn how to prepare for that. So our process is teaching people how to live in the present, plan for a future, and reflect on the past, but not to get stuck in the past. And people that suffer with things like depression and PTSD normally are really stuck in the past, and that's what we try to work past. And then service is really about service to others, and that's really important in this model. Think of it as getting through a journey of trauma and being able to turn around and help somebody else through that similar journey. The outcomes of post-traumatic growth occur in 5 areas. New possibilities, that I see that there are opportunities. I see hope. I tell people all the time, I believe suicide is the disease of hopelessness. And when you get to that point where tomorrow and day after and that day after that just don't seem to be, won't be any better, then suicide becomes an option. And in the world of post-traumatic growth, one of the outcomes is seeing these new possibilities, seeing that hope. Deeper relationships is a big part of the outcomes of post-traumatic growth. Personal strength, again, being able to turn around and help others through it, and that I'm well, because I tell everybody, if you're not well, you can't help others, and military people tend to want to help everybody. So getting that personal strength back is really important. An appreciation for life. Again, if you appreciate life, there's a good chance you won't take your life. And I think that that's a really important element of how we measure post-traumatic growth. And all these things are, in fact, scientifically measurable. And then the last thing is this whole idea of spiritual and existential change. I'm not a religious guy. Our program's not a faith-based program. But at the end of the day, we do see these things occur. We talk about spirituality. I kind of think, in a similar message that maybe Jesus did, which was, treat each other the way you want to be treated, do things for others who don't have as much as you do. But we measure spirituality really in 3 ways: through our character, our relationships to others, and our service to others. And to be able to see those things occur and how we measure those is really important to us. We got a grant to do an 18-month study on our program. We had 49 people. We actually had 50 people go through the program. 49 of them participated in the 18-month study. And we saw results in this program. I'm happy to share the 18-month study if anybody's really interested in all the details, but saw results in this study that are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 to 5 times better than traditional mental health programming. But more importantly than just being better, we measure the quality of life, and that's something traditional mental health programs don't measure. They measure symptom reduction, and normally symptom reduction alone. I don't believe that that's good enough. I think that if you really want to measure people's success, you've got to measure the quality of life, because the true opposite of suicide is living a great life. It's not prevention programs. It's not, a little bit of symptom reduction. Oh, I feel less bad today than I did yesterday. That's not good enough. And really what we wanted to see was, are we really affecting these long-term quality of life issues? So these are some of the results. They may not mean anything to you without seeing the whole study. And if you're interested in that, it's on our website, and I'm also happy to share it. The most interesting thing I think in this study to me was this whole idea of stress reactivity, this perceived stress. Stress is really what we're talking about when we talk about wellness, and how stress kind of has this impact on our bodies and what in our minds, and what we tend to do with that. The biggest thing that you want to be able to show, I think, and demonstrate to people is that people have an ability, who have been through your programs, to perceive that they can in fact handle stress better. Because if they don't feel that, and don't feel positive when it comes to handling that stress, then the next time something happens, it's just going to take them down like the first time did. So it's really important that these types of things are measured. These are some of the measurements. Again, I think, the deeper relationships early on at Boulder Crest, because of my background primarily, most of the people that came through here had a special operations background. Historically, the military divorce rates have always been higher than civil rates. Civilians divorce at about 50% of marriages. The military historically was at about 55%. At one point in time, at Special Operations Command in Tampa, they were saying that the divorce rate was nearing about 95% of their soldiers, sailors, and airmen and Marines. So pretty substantial. So to see growth in these relationships was really important to us. So all of this has been, really interesting as we've looked at it. The same donors that funded us, Bernie Marcus from the Home Depot world, that funded us for testing our program, has also provided resources for us to scale. We have nonprofit partners in 6 other areas right now that are delivering our Warrior Path program. So we're trying to get that up to 10, and today that's where all the locations of where we are. The work we do here at Boulder Crest, my colleague and I, Josh Goldberg, maybe some of you know, Josh and I wrote a book called Struggle Well, Thriving in the Aftermath of Trauma. It's based on not only our personal stories, but it's based on the work we do here at Boulder Crest, and also based on the science of post-traumatic growth. If you're readers and you want to learn more about our work, I'd also encourage you to read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I think it's one of the most powerful books in the world when it comes to understanding trauma. And Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton. There's a couple friends of ours did a research project on what happened to these men at the Hanoi Hilton in Vietnam. And they put it into a great book called Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton. And I would highly encourage you to read that to get a better feel for how these men went on to do some remarkable things in the aftermath of their traumas. And I'm happy to answer questions now or whenever the right time is.
We have some questions in the chat. Allison, you want me to read them?
Sure, go ahead.
Ken, after the questions, we'll move over to Bart and his presentation. Okay, so first one, are MST survivors welcomed into your program, or only those who are combat engaged? What happens to service members working at Dover Air Force Base at the mortuary?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're pretty gray on who comes here. You know, our primary target are combat veterans who are honorably discharged. We're a small nonprofit. You know, we put somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple hundred people at our facilities a year through the program. So we're really dedicated to that community, because people that are alike minded kind of heal. We ran some of the first MST programs in this country were run here at Boulder Crest, including the first male MST program in the country that was ever run, was run here at Boulder Crest in Virginia. We don't do an MST only program anymore. We have found that a lot of the women specifically that come into our programs, and many of the men that come into our programs, most of the women that come into our programs who are combat veterans also have MST, but we don't do an MST only program. Same thing for Dover. We just did a program for drone pilots out at Creech Air Force Base, and we've done some similar things for mortuary crew as well who come through, but nothing that's dedicated to them. But we have done some programs where one or two of them have been through the program. Joshua, I can see these questions now, I think. No, we don't have any. It's a peer-based program. The next question was, do you use any techniques like EMDR? Are there trained psychologists, professionals at the retreat? No, there's not. The program's been developed in concert with trained, but one of the reasons that we believe it works so well is because it is peer-based. I'm not a big fan of EMDR. I'm not a big fan of traditional mental health care, period. Happy to talk about that offline if you want. But, I tell everybody, if something's working for you, let it work. But the truth is most of it doesn't work. And that's why I'm at where I'm at today. So we don't do any of those procedures. PTS and PTSD, when to push and when to follow. I'm not sure what that means. The next one says, what type of measurement do you guys do? We have about a 250 question questionnaire, but it's most of the main tools that you would see in traditional care, post-traumatic growth checklists, depression and anxiety scales, insomnia scales, a bunch of different standard ones. We use the post-traumatic growth inventory, and then we have a few questions that we just kind of made up on our own that we thought were relevant, that had to do with legal problems that people get into, and some drug and alcohol questions, and employment questions. We like to know if people are working or aren't working. That's that. So if you have any more questions on that, I'm happy to answer or send you. I can send you our 18-month study, Paris, that basically shows every single question that's asked. If you want that, just drop me your email address. Okay, Allison's asking me to send that. What is the eligibility for our PATH program? Really, it's combat veterans with honorable discharges. That's our sweet spot.
Okay, 10-4. So we'll have a few minutes after Bart goes for questions for Bart and for Ken, if you guys have any. So feel free to keep them coming as we go forward if you think of anything new. This time we'll pass it over to Bart Sherwood at TADSAW. Thank you so much, Ken, and let's keep it going.
Thank you, Josh and Allison, for inviting TADSAW to participate. I'm Bart Sherwood. I'm the program director, founder for the Train a Dog, Save a Warrior program based in San Antonio, Texas. Our acronym is TADSAW, Inc. The Inc. doesn't stand exactly for incorporated. It actually stands for a Latin phrase, illegitimi non carbundum, which basically translates to don't let the bastards grind you down. And the one thing that we're pretty consistent on is that, you know, today is June 6th, D-Day. And as I told Josh and Allison earlier, D to me stands for destigmatizing the situation. To think that and place on all of our veterans and active duty personnel a mental health, mental illness condition, diagnosis, when they went to war, learned how to fight and learned how to kill in the name of our country, and then give them a stigma that says that you're mentally ill and we need to do something about your mental awareness. About 5 years ago, I decided that the term military-induced anxiety depression syndrome really fit the condition better, because it's an occupational hazard related health hazard in which you've done things, learned things, and seen things that normal people do not see or do in their life. And by looking at it as an occupational hazard, we're actually transforming the veteran or the service member from a infantry or whatever his MOS in the military was to that of a dog handler. This is really the primary concern of the program, is training our veterans to train their service dogs from start to finish, not waiting to get a dog, waiting 3 to 5 years possibly before they ever got a dog and get some assistance. Today also, there's a saying, the only thing harder than getting a new idea into the military mind, which would be the active duty or the Veterans Affairs Department, is to get the old ones out. And that seems to be the biggest hindrance in moving forward with a lot of our therapeutic programs that are around besides service dogs, is that there's just instead of the VA saying we're Americans, they really want to say the VA is Americans. And we have to look at it as we can do everything that we set our mind to. But like I said, today is D-Day, destigmatization day, that, you know, letting everybody know about it. Let's bring these veterans, these warriors out into the public, out into their own eyes, that they haven't done anything wrong. Also, this month is PTSD Awareness Month. And for TADSAW, it's almost a celebration for what we've done, because the TADSAW Participant Trained Service Dog Program, which is PTSD, relies on the veteran taking part in the training of their own dog to get their military-induced anxiety depression syndrome, their MIADS, under control, and destigmatizing the label that's been put on them as far as mental health, mental illness. Not everything is going to be cured with pills or with counseling sessions. It's really, a lot of it's changed with doing something that takes your mind off it. And really, the dog is almost the perfect tool, because the dog has the ability to smell the adrenaline and cortisol when it's released into your system when you've been triggered. A lot of therapies rely on you reaching that threshold of a fight or flight situation, and you realizing there's something wrong, or you're getting close to it, to go and initiate another therapeutic form, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's painting, whether it's exercise, yoga, whatever. You have to be almost to that threshold point of a fight or flight situation to be able to take notice. the dog actually smells the adrenaline and cortisol within 1 to 3 minutes after the person is triggered. And by training the dog to interact with that person, or more so, training the person to be proactively responsive to the dog's body language, it really makes it really accessible that when you're triggered, your dog is going to go ahead and let you know that you're no longer a pack leader, that he's taking over the pack. And by you proactively responding, you go ahead and release the oxytocin at that point in time to counteract the adrenaline and cortisol. And you're basically releasing the oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and dopamine 3 to 5 minutes after the trigger occurs, which makes you anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes before you might have reached the threshold of a fight or flight situation where the light goes off and says, hey, take a Xanax, take a Valium, take a lorazepam, take a deep breath like the therapist said, to go ahead and release that oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and dopamine, to go and start counteracting the adrenaline and cortisol. But unfortunately, you're already basically 12 to 15 minutes in the middle of a panic attack, and it's going to take you 45 minutes to 4 to 5 hours to release enough oxytocin to counteract that adrenaline and cortisol. I apologize, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation to get all this out there so you can see it, but I'm working on it with my webmaster and my social media people. I'm not technologically advanced, so bear with me, please. So the TADSAW program started out in 2010, and basically, we train the veteran to train their personal dog if they have one. If they don't have one, we get one from a shelter. We don't do any training of puppies. We believe in using an older dog that has a fully developed sense of smell. And the veteran goes through the program learning how to be a dog trainer, which is his new MOS. So when he is triggered for a memory, the dog reminds him that, hey, you're a dog trainer now, come back here. And as the dog learns all the obedience commands necessary for appropriate behavior, and the veteran learns giving those commands, how well the two of them bond and work together as a team dictates how long it takes them to go through the program, whether it's 20 to 25 weeks, it could be less, it could be more. It just depends on the team working together as a unit. Whatever kind of task the veteran needs for the dog to do, he and the trainer will work on it. They all work under the supervision of a TADSAW dog trainer. So whatever the task is that the veteran needs to improve his quality of life, that's what they work on. Whether it's reminding him to take medication, finding his keys, picking up an object, bringing it to him, standing behind him in a checkout line at a Walmart, Target, or a food source so somebody can't walk up from behind and basically, startle them. The dog can alert them when somebody's coming up from behind. So there's probably 150 different tasks that you can train your dog to do, but what does the veteran need for the dog to do to improve his quality of life? And everybody's quality of life is different, and the tasks are different. Many are similar, but everybody has their own quality of life issues. The big difference in the program, like I said, is learning how to read and understand the dog's body language. So when you are triggered and start that release of adrenaline and cortisol and neurotransmitters, you're not just pushing your dog away saying, go lay down, don't bother me. It's now accepting the fact that the dog can smell that adrenaline and cortisol, and they do that naturally. There is no factice. You can train them to smell dynamite. You can train them to smell money, drugs, contraband, whatever. But when it comes to adrenaline and cortisol, they tend to pick it up by themselves. And many of you have seen, I'm sure, the therapy dogs that go into hospitals, nursing homes, clinics, and the dog immediately interacts with the person and can smell the adrenaline and cortisol. But the handler of that therapy dog also is reading the dog's body language to be able to give a good intervention with that dog and the patient. I saw a question pop up. What is the best dog? A dog that has one nose, 4 legs, and a tail. They don't know how big they are. We have dogs in our program that are as small as Yorkie Poos all the way up to Great Danes and giant breeds. As long as they have a good active sense of smell and they have a good human canine gene factor, then that's really what makes a good service dog. You can train a service dog pretty much for sit down, stay, leave it, and for all kinds of different tasks. But if they don't have that human canine gene factor, they're not going to make a service dog. They'll go through the program and they'll, do what you want them to do because they're obedient. But as far as picking up on a lot of things, they'll wait till you get in the middle of a panic attack before they're going to do anything. One of my veterans asked about, does our dog do, will we train him for deep pressure therapy? So when I'm in the middle of a panic attack, will the dog get me out of it? And I told him that if you have a dog that's waiting till you're in the middle of the panic attack, you need to find a new dog because of the fact the dog has missed when you were triggered. So it's about taking control. And this program is built on the same philosophy that made the military very successful, our military successful. Learn one, do one, teach one. The only secret about service dog training is there is no secret. So it's basically, if we can teach you to train your own dog, then the next time you need to replace your dog, you have the ability to train your own dog, which is under the same guidelines as the Americans with Disabilities Act says. So if you can train your own dog and you can take control, then you're in good shape. I don't know how many of you served and how many times your drill sergeant cleans your M16 while you were in training, or how many times your drill sergeant, spit polished your boots for inspection. But most likely there's only probably one or two out of you out in this audience that actually had that happen. So we feel that by you training the dog and going forward, you can pass that on to another veteran. You're one of your brothers or sisters. Learn one, do one, teach one, because the only way we're going to go ahead and prevent suicides is by having more people involved in getting more of our veterans into a safe place that the drugs aren't helping them on, the counseling sessions aren't helping them on. And so it's about putting the remedy, the treatment into their hands and letting them move forward. Not everybody wants to be with a dog, so you can't help them on that. But the dog is man's natural best friend, and and that's why it works so well. To date, TADSAW has prevented over 1,300 suicides for veterans that have gone through our program. We've got 1,324 service dog teams across the country. About 40 to 50 veterans come on board every month to go through the program. How long it takes them? We say maybe 20 to 25 weeks. It could be less, it could be more. It's just until they become proficient and move forward. So they're always going to be training their dog every day once they leave the program. We get them through to see how proficient they are, but they have to maintain, that proficiency by going places. We take them in the public where they don't like to go, so that way the trainer can see their interaction between the dog and them. And so they start building up that confidence that they can do it. And the three things that are lost with military-induced anxiety, depression syndrome, I just don't like saying participant-trained service dog to mean PTSD, but you lose your self-confidence, your self-esteem, and your self-trust. By training the dog and being involved in the training of your own personal dog, your own service dog, then you are rebuilding that self-esteem, that self-trust, and that self-confidence. And it's a better adrenaline rush than any drug that's going to go ahead and take care of you. We have 943 male veterans in our program and 381 female veterans that have gone through our program. So we kind of look over, try and take care of all the demographics. We have 149 Vietnam veterans. We have 2 Korean War veterans that have gone through the program. So we take care of whoever served, and as long as they wore a uniform, they're eligible for our program. The only ones that don't get into our program are the ones that don't fill out the application. It's kind of like the only shots in basketball that you miss are the ones you don't take. So I open the floor to any kind of questions. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Hey, Bart, we have one question. How do you take referrals?
What do you mean? Well, people just go ahead and contact me by phone, call me, and I send out an app. I talk to them, tell them about the program, and then I send them an application. We have trainers all across the country. We try to keep trainers or have trainers within a 45 to 90 minute mile radius of where the veterans live. We don't want them coming to, areas that they are going to be stressed out in, having to spend nights in hotels. They typically train twice a week for about 30 to 45 minutes at a session. They go home, they practice with their dog in their own location. That's where they live. So their dog needs to get used to doing things in their location so they can do things in their home area. And, so it's finding enough trainers that want to work with veterans, which seems to be why I want every veteran to learn how to train a service dog, because this way they don't have to rely on, the civilians rely on the military to take care of everything. Wars, hurricanes, disasters, whatever. And yet, when it comes to the veteran needing help, very few of the civilians rise to the occasion. So I think that's why it's so important that what was successful for our military, taking high school students out and training to be military, personnel, is the same thing that, makes our program so successful, is that we rely on these same individuals to be able to go through the program. If it takes them longer, it takes them longer, but everybody is eligible.
Next question. If the warrior has multiple dogs in their home, is there going to be an issue training one of their own dogs as a service dog?
It shouldn't be, because they're already a pack. And there's one dog that probably sits out in that household that spends more time with you, and the other dogs know it. So when you go to training, the dog is still a dog when he gets home. He's still going to play with his brothers and sisters. He's going to play with the kids in the family. Just because he's a service dog, it doesn't change what he does. It just says, when I leave the house, I've got another job to do. So I'm out there with my human, taking care of my human, making sure if he is triggered, I bring him back, that he's, can take care of it. He's in charge. And excuse me. And when I get home, I'm a dog. I'm going to sit there and lick myself and clean myself and play with the kids. And, and when he's triggered at the house, or she's triggered at the house, I'll go up, let him know. And then, we'll bring him back to being in the house, not someplace else. So having multiple dogs in the household, no, sometimes it's harder if none of the dogs are suitable and have to bring a new dog in, because then you really have to get the dog into that pack before he can actually do some training. And it doesn't matter what the age is. If it's an older dog, 7, 8 years old, that's fine. If that's your best buddy, if that's your battle buddy, your best friend, then let's go through the program, training you to train the dog for all the necessary requirements for a service dog. And then you have the ability to go and work with one of the younger dogs. There's no magic to this. It's just the dog's obedience out, the appropriate behavior out in public, and he's taking care of your needs, which is is alerting you when you're triggered and bringing you back to, not that you're deployed anymore, you're still at home base.
I got you. All right. Well, if anyone else has any other questions, please include them in the chat box. At this time, I think we're on track to wrap up about 15 minutes early, which would be around 1500. I'm going to pass it over to Allison, as you can see on your screen, for breakouts. Thank you so much, Bart, Ken. And if there are any other questions, we'll send them to you. And please feel free to share that phone number, Bart, in the contents in case somebody here in this battle rhythm would like to reach out to you directly.
Okay. Do I do that in the chat section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Pass it over to you, Allison. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks. So we're going to go ahead and start the breakout activity. We're going to be able to, I think, go for about 20 minutes today. It's going to be a little bit shorter than usual, but I think we will be fine. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes in breakout rooms. And remember, they're intended to be collaborative conversation. So the lead is just there to get it started. So when the room's open, you should be able to self-select a topic and go to that room. If you don't mind, if you'll rename yourself and put your name, your organization's name at the end of your name, then we can kind of save time and won't have to deal with a lot of introductions over and over again. So just put, like, I would put AWP on the end of my name if I rename it. So our groups are going to be post-traumatic stress growth with Ken Falk. Topic 2 will be destigmatizing PTS with Bart Sherwood. And topic number 3, we're going to have an open group. Josh has been willing to just lead this open discussion group on PTS. So just if you'd like to just have a conversation about you as a provider and what you can do to help veterans who are suffering with PTS, then go into that group as well. I'm going to go ahead and open the groups now. We'll see you back in about 20 minutes. Thanks, guys. All right, I think everybody's back now. Thank you so much for your time you took having that great discussions, like at least I hope you had. Summer, I believe you were going to share with us from the first topic, post-traumatic growth. What were some key points to take away during that presentation?
In the Warrior Path program from Boulder Crest Foundation, they do about 9 programs a month for their post-traumatic growth program. And the Warrior Path is the nation's first non-clinical program to cultivate and facilitate post-traumatic growth. And they have 1 mobile training team. And these mobile training teams are normally in areas where the veteran population isn't as dense, and they travel to about 10 different locations a year. And they were able to deliver more programs in the past year than they had in the past 7 years.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, sounds like it was a good discussion. All right, so Bart, with destigmatizing PTS, or you're going to do your takeaways, or did you appoint someone?
Abby or Jim, did you want to share what we talked about?
I wrote a couple of things down, so I can go ahead and do it.
Okay, good.
We just talked about how, it's really important maybe to get back to basics on, like a pill doesn't solve absolutely everything. And so we kind of all just related to that, and maybe, therapy routes that have been proven to, work in the past, and like there's like studies and stuff behind it, and kind of just really maybe taking away and improving like the language behind how you approach like PTS, and leaving the disorder off of it and just going with post-traumatic stress. And then I think it was Benjamin who said, trying different avenues of just like social support and getting together with people who are able to really like relate to what you're going through, and just being able to have like that, candid conversation with people. And then I brought up something from when I was in school. You kind of have to get used to being uncomfortable. You got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because people are talking to you about, a really difficult time. And so, just being respectful of what they're going through, and not making them feel bad for the feelings that they're having, and validating, the emotions and the stress that they're undergoing, just so we can take away like that negative, stigma surrounding all of the feelings and other comorbidities that go along with PTS.
Thank you. Yeah, Benjamin said, yes, that was me, using gaming and veteran groups to bring out new sense of belonging and normalcy. Very good. Thank you, Benjamin. Thanks for adding that. All right, Joshua, I believe you had the open discussion group. So how did that go?
Yeah, no, it went good. And to Benjamin's comment, I am with a veterans gaming group, and I was just telling Bart that one of the memes that they posted in the group said, don't worry if we always fail, it's garbage can, not garbage cannot. And it was a picture of Grouch with sunglasses. So big fan of veteran gaming groups. It's pretty cool to have Discords, and even some of our old units have Discords where they talk about games and things. So it does seem to be happening all the time. Yeah, no, it's not Regiment GG, but that sounds really cool. I have to check it out. Anyway, as far as the open group, I listened to Katie and Lisa and Edwin explain how they work directly with veterans. And Michelle and I are both from America's Warrior Partnership. We were there. And so it's interesting to look at the different levels in which people connect to the veterans that they're serving. So I work with employees who are military connected. They could be families, they could be spouses, and it's more about outreach. If you're like Lisa, who is a VSO in Monroe County, they're working directly with veterans on a regular basis. Edwin Johnson with Mentor Our Military constantly works with veterans to manage their triggers and their stress and to get them connected to resources. And Katie works from the medical sort of point of view, helping people. So it was just interesting to listen to the different levels in which we help people and come together to understand how we might all work around solving some of the issues that come with post-traumatic stress. What we discussed very briefly, primarily Lisa and I, was when should you reach out and contact law enforcement or medical professionals when there's a crisis situation. And Allison, the reason we talked about that is because we recently had that training. And just yesterday, I come across a situation where I had to decide how far I wanted to intervene helping somebody else. So we talked about that a little bit. And just so that we're out here for Boulder Crest, many of the organizations have used Boulder Crest, and some of our people have used service dogs and had nothing but good things to say about both the resources and what they're doing for vets. So thank you again for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating and actively collaborating. I really appreciate it. It's only by working together we can help each other solve and come up with new ideas and learn about what's going on out there, like Bart and with Boulder Crest as well. Josh, I'm going to let you go ahead and close us out for the day.
Yep, certainly. Thank you all for collaborating and sharing. We believe communities are best equipped to improve the quality of life of veterans when we work together. Our goal at America's Warrior Partnership is to provide community partners like yourself with support to help you deliver quality service. We hope today provided you with powerful insight, best practices, new partners, and tools to improve the quality of life for the veterans you serve. The next Battle Rhythm is on July 11th and will be hosted by the Wounded Warrior Partnership. We hope you can attend, and thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Bart.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. You can't hear me anyway.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jim. Good to see you.